As our government has come to office, we have inherited a defence procurement mess, a complete mess. Under the coalition government, we saw 28 different projects running accumulated total of 97 years over time. The Hunter-class frigates, 4 years over time, $15 billion over budget. The Spartan battlefield airlifters, 4.5 years over time, and unable to fly into battlefields. Offshore patrol vessels, a year over time. The evolved Cape-class patrol boat, another year over time. What we had with the former government was a government that was totally focused on press releases and announcements, on hoopla and vaudeville, but when it came to the active management of defence procurement, they were one of the worst governments in our nation's history. And not least because we saw 6, really 7, defence ministers in 9 years, the last of whom was the opposition leader, and he needs to answer for this. And all of this has occurred at a time when our strategic circumstances are very complex and extremely challenging. In a rational world, defence spending is a function of strategic threat, and we are rational people. We do expect that the defence budget will grow over the medium to long term, which is why the budget needs to be managed in an excellent way where we focus on the quality of defence spending so that we achieve the highest capability as soon as possible. And the Albanese Labor government is committed to doing exactly that, getting back to basics, establishing an independent project office, seeking monthly reports, having clear and objective criteria by which projects are placed upon the projects of interest and the projects of concern list. In short, we are going to actively manage defence procurement after a lost decade of negligence on the part of the former government. And I want to be clear on one point, this is not the fault of the Department of Defence, this is not the fault of Australian defence industry. They are fantastic and do a wonderful job in serving the national interest. What we have seen is a complete failure of leadership by the former coalition government, and we intend to rectify that. We are going to manage defence spending in a way which achieves value for money for taxpayers, and we're going to manage defence procurement in a way which is going to keep Australians safe. Pat.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister. And as the DPM said, there are 3 critical and fundamental parties to delivering these sorts of capabilities. There's the Department of Defence and the ADF, there's defence industry, and the third and critical party is government and the ministers of the day. And the truth is that the last government failed in its job of ministerial oversight and energy, failed in its job of actually overseeing this process, bringing defence and industry together to resolve these challenging areas. Because the truth is that defence procurement is complex, it is challenging, and that's why you need defence ministers that are engaged, that are actively working every day to advance the interests of the Australian people and the ADF. And the truth is that defence ministers under the last government lasted on average 18 months. Goldfish lasted longer than coalition defence ministers. And the result of that was a lack of oversight. And a couple of key indicators of that are ministerial summits to resolve problem projects. In the last 3 years of the last Labor government, there were 6 summits in those 3 years, 6 summits in 3 years. In the first 9 years of the coalition government, including Peter Dutton's time as Defence Minister, there were a paltry 6 summits in 9 years. So a tripling of the length of time between ministerial summits, which is critical to bringing defence and industry together. On the projects of concern process, which is so important to driving resolution to these challenging projects. The last Labor government in 6 years listed 21 projects as projects of concern. The last Liberal government under Peter Dutton, but across the entire 9 years, listed 4 projects. And ladies and gentlemen, these projects weren't getting easier. They only listed 4 not because the projects were getting simpler. They listed 4 because they did not care about doing their daily job. They did not care. They were asleep at the wheel, and that's why we've seen cumulative delays of 97 years across these 28 projects. And two examples of that the DPM talked about, the Hunter-class frigate, where the last government lied to the Australian people that they were getting an off-the-shelf design that was proven and working for other navies. It was a developmental project. They are literally designing this ship right now, and the result of that is a 4-year delay in cutting steel for that vital project. On the offshore patrol vessels, vital capability to the Royal Australian Navy, the last government actively intervened and instructed the successful tenderer Lursons to include the unsuccessful tenderer in their project as a subcontractor. They intervened to force this outcome, which ultimately failed, delaying the project by a year. And so, as the DPM has highlighted, we're announcing 6 critical reforms that will improve project delivery, that will improve performance in defence and defence industry, that will help ensure that the ADF get the equipment they need when they need it, and taxpayers' money is protected. That's the Independent Project Management Office, the monthly projects of concern meeting updates to ministers, a formal criteria and early warning indicators for problem projects, importantly, changing the culture of defence, providing greater resources to projects in trouble, and convening regular ministerial summits so that ministers will be involved again in this process.